vampires have permeated every corner of our culture. They appear in books, on TV, and even in the fantasies of that strange guy down the road who thinks he's a vampire. It seems that no matter where you are in the world, you've likely heard stories and legends of these vampire-like creatures. With such a rich history to explore, it's natural to wonder where vampires originated and why we're so fascinated by them. The word vampire brings to mind a variety of images, from the iconic portrayals of Nosferatu in Christopher Lee's Dracula to the peculiar latex-wearing goths with guns, and even the glittering abominations we'd all rather forget. Our perception of vampires in popular culture has been shaped by the legends of old, which we will delve into today. Prior to the 18th century, the term vampire wasn't widely known, much like the hysteria surrounding witch trials. However, a series of strange disappearances, peculiar markings on corpses, and suspicious activities in graveyards and cemeteries led to accusations of vampirism. The majority of these reports originated from the Balkans and Eastern Europe, each region having its own version of what we now consider a vampire. Some of the oldest examples of vampire-like creatures worldwide include figures such as Lamashtu, Lilith, Lamia, and the Empusa, all of whom are female but not necessarily the undead creatures commonly associated with vampires. They are more akin to demons or succubi. In Romania and other parts of Eastern Europe, tales of the strigoi spirits emerged. These were beings who had risen from the grave and could only survive by consuming the blood of others. They had the ability to turn invisible and even transform into animals, similar to the vampires of today, who are often depicted as transforming into bats or other creatures. Variations of the word strigoi can be found in various languages. In Greek and Latin, stryx referred to nocturnal bird women who fed on the blood and flesh of children. This concept was also present in France. In Romanian, the term strigoi literally means one who has risen from the grave. These myths likely refer to something more akin to blood parasites than the seductive vampires commonly depicted in fiction. The earliest recorded account of a suspected strigoi dates back to 1656 in what is now modern-day Croatia. A villager named Jure Grando began terrorizing his town after his death earlier that year. According to legends, Grando rose from the grave and knocked on doors throughout the village. Within a few days of his visit to a house, someone inside would die. This continued for 16 years until the villagers found a way to kill him. One night, Grando appeared before his widowed wife, who claimed that his corpse was gasping for air but still had a sinister grin. The priest responsible for burying Grando 16 years earlier led a group of villagers on a quest to uncover the truth behind these mysterious deaths. When they encountered the vampire, one man attempted to impale him in the heart with a wooden pole, but Grando's skin proved too tough. The pole bounced off and splintered. The priest then brandished his cross and shouted, "Behold, Jesus Christ, you vampire! Stop tormenting us!" The vampire fled. The next morning, the villagers exhumed Grando's coffin and discovered a perfectly preserved body with a smile on its face. They tried to stab him in the heart with a wooden stake, but their attempts were futile as the skin could not be penetrated. The priest decided to perform an exorcism, and another villager decapitated the vampire with a saw. They noticed that the skin around his neck offered less resistance, and as blood poured from the wound, the vampire screamed in pain. With the vampire finally dead, the village could rest. After this incident, several precautions and methods were employed by Romanians and others to protect themselves from the strigoi. There was a common belief that certain individuals, particularly redheads, could transform into animals and sneak into houses to feed off young women. To prevent this, coffins would be nailed shut, and in some cases, the corpses would be staked in the heart before burial. If someone was suspected of rising from the grave, various methods were used to ensure they stayed dead. Bodies would be exhumed, hearts removed and cut into two, a nail driven into the forehead, and a clove of garlic placed under the tongue. Finally, the body would be reburied facing downwards, as it was believed that if the strigoi ever woke, they would be sent straight down to the afterlife. There was also a belief that one could become a strigoi while still alive if certain conditions were met. The strigoi were divided into three main categories: a witch, a living strigoi, and a strigoi who had risen from the dead. Speaking of Romanian history, one cannot overlook the famous historical figure Vlad Dracul, also known as Vlad the Impaler, due to his fondness for impaling his enemies on pikes and reveling in their slow deaths. Some argue that Vlad the Impaler was a significant influence on Bram Stoker's Dracula, although others disagree. It is intriguing to note the similarities in terms of name, location, and bloodlust. There are also other undead European creatures worth mentioning, such as the Nordic Draga, protectors of tombs, the Balkan Dampier, born from the union of a male vampire and a human female, and the Albanian Lugat, a typical vampire who cannot tolerate sunlight but enjoys seducing people into the darkness. In Australia, according to Aboriginal myth, there existed a creature known as the Yaramayahu. This small, red, frog-like man hid in trees, with an extraordinarily large head and suckers on the ends of its hands and feet. It preferred to hunt during the day when unsuspecting travelers rested under its tree. It would jump down, drain the victim's blood, and swallow them whole. After a nap, the Yaramayahu would regurgitate the victim, who would then wake with a reddish tint to their skin and be smaller than before. This process would continue until the victim transformed into a Yaramayahu. In West Africa, legends speak of a creature with iron teeth, long red hair, and hooks for feet called the Asin Bozum. Hanging from trees, the Asin Bozum would attack its victims from above, piercing their necks with its hooks and draining their blood. In the Philippines, there is the Manananggal, a hideous creature capable of detaching its torso from the rest of its body and sprouting bat-like wings. Similar to Lamastu, the Manananggal preys on pregnant women, using its elongated tongue to suck out the hearts of fetuses. However, it is repelled by salt, garlic, and holy water. When separated from its lower half, the creature is most vulnerable. Rubbing crushed garlic, salt, or ash onto its lower half is believed to be lethal. If the upper half fails to rejoin the lower half by sunrise, the creature perishes. In Malaysia, the Penanggalan is a ghostly spirit that floats through the air with her entrails hanging beneath her. Unlike the Manananggal, the Penanggalan is a living being, a mortal woman who practices black magic. By performing a ritual in a vat or bath of vinegar, she can assume this ghostly form during the night and return to her regular body in the morning. China has its own undead creatures known as Haiachi. These reanimated corpses have such stiff joints that they hop around, seeking victims to kill and absorb their life force. Like traditional vampires, they prefer to rest in dark places during the day. With the myriad of vampire-like creatures found in various cultures around the world, defining a vampire becomes a complex task. However, one recurring trait is the need to consume the life force of other living creatures in order to sustain themselves. Other characteristics vary depending on the location and culture, but certain expectations have been established in fictional contexts, such as vampires fearing sunlight and possessing fangs used for feeding. The legends of vampires and vampire-like creatures have captivated our imaginations for centuries. They have evolved and been influenced by diverse cultures, shaping the way we perceive and portray them in popular culture. From the ancient myths and beliefs to the contemporary depictions, the fascination with vampires continues to endure, leaving us to ponder the origins of these captivating creatures and the reasons behind our enduring obsession with them.